Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Mary Abbajay, and I'd like to welcome you to the Friday 15. This is my weekly broadcast every Friday where we go live for 15 fast, furious, and hopefully fruitful minutes to talk about career and workplace success. Today's topic is how to succeed as a new manager. Going from bud to boss is one of the biggest career moves people make in their career, and it can be a bit treacherous. It's a huge jump. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about ways that you can make this move successfully. If you remember, a few weeks ago, we did a session on how to manage up to an inexperienced or, quite frankly, an incompetent boss. So, today I thought it'd be fun to actually turn the tables in that conversation to tell new managers what they can do to be successful, how they can avoid the common challenges or those pesky pitfalls that they're going to face as they become new managers. Now, today, for a very special treat, I've invited my Cubicle Confidential podcast co-host, Mr. Chris Santis. Chris, as you know, is super talented, whip smart, and fabulous. And Chris, why don't you come on up and say hello to everybody? Hey, Chris.
Hi, Mary. Hi,
How
everybody.
are you doing today?
Thanks for having me today.
Oh, thanks for being here. So as you know, because you've done the live with me before, we are going live on LinkedIn. So if you are watching us on LinkedIn Live, or if you're watching it afterwards, please join the conversation. We want to know from you, new managers, what are some of the common challenges and pitfalls you're facing? And for those of you who've already successfully made this transition, what were some of the lessons learned that you would like to share with other new managers? So, Chris, I know that we're going to do this topic on an upcoming Cubicle Confidential podcast, by the way, August 11th. But I thought this would be a good topic for today because I don't know about you, but I get a lot of questions on this topic. So I thought we'd give folks a little preview on some of our advice. And, one of the challenges that I think people face is that I read a few years ago a study at Harvard where they said most people get their first tastes of being a supervisor or a manager sometime in their late 20s or early 30s. But these same people don't get any real training until their late 30s or early 40s. So you have 10 years of people just kind of winging it and trying to figure it out. So I don't know if you've seen this, but what are some of that you've seen, the common challenges or more fun? What are some of the common mistakes that you see new managers often make?
Well, I think it's a very broad question, and I don't know about the biggest mistakes, but rather the likeliest mistakes are that you're new to the role, right? You're new to the role. And so you were in that role because you were good at the old role.
That's right.
And so when you're good at the old role and you don't know the new role, what is it likely that you will do? You'll bring the old role with you. Yeah. And this is called the need for the promotion jettison. And so what you've got to do is you've got to jettison what you did before, but you've got to go into this sort of untrodden territory, a place that you're not familiar. And so, and by the way, you're under some pressure here because you think, well, they've rewarded me for my performance, and now I have to continue to be an outstanding performer, to your point, in an area where I have no experience.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very big challenge for them.
Yeah. So coming into the role and still keeping that performer mindset as opposed to the manager mindset. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly right.
I totally agree. And I think, they're two completely different roles. And one, you are the doer, and the other, for lack of a better word, you are the overseer or the promoter, right? You are the creator of the conditions for the performer. Yes. One of the mistakes I often see that new managers make is two mistakes. One is, I think we often, when we step into the role, and I think I'm probably guilty of this, is we tend to use a management style that we like in terms of how we like to be managed, right? So if we tend to be very hands-off, we'll tend to manage very hands-off, which may or may not be appropriate for the people to whom we are managing. So I think we take our preferences and we just kind of, push them on other people. And then the other thing I think I see a lot of, and tell me if you disagree, is I think people tend to either over-manage or under-manage, right? They don't seem to find like that right fit. So some new managers will like over-manage to prove themselves, and some will be kind of afraid to step into that role and will under-manage. What are your thoughts on that? Have you ever seen that?
Yes, I would agree with you, because I build off of what you had said. You tend to go with the preferences and how you lead. but you also have preferences in how you display your stress.
Yes.
And this is a stressful situation since it's such an unknown to you. So what you end up doing is you project your stress. And to your point, if you tend to over control, you might end up at the same time lashing out at people and trying to and correcting them overtly, or the reverse. Maybe you pretend everything is perfectly fine when it isn't fine at all. So you have to take into account not only what your preferences are when you're leading, but what are your preferences or your likelihoods when you're under stress, and how do you show those?
I love that. And we just got a great comment from Kyle Long. They are afraid of being the micromanager. Yeah, Kyle, when I first became a manager, you hit it on the head, my friend. I am such a ghost manager because I'm afraid of coming across as a micromanager, which then turns me into a passive aggressive manager because I try to keep my hands off. Yeah, I think that's true. I think people are afraid of being either a micromanager or they're afraid of not showing their worth. I think they go to extremes.
Here's another thing. What's interesting when people say micromanager, they're saying it from the perspective of themselves to the other. But you see that they're assuming the other person interprets them as a micromanager.
That's right.
But imagine if you're new to a job and you don't know how to do it. This isn't a micromanager anymore. This is a teacher.
Yeah, I love that.
So there is a distinction here. I think the key is the assumption that this person who's working for you is as you are and needs what you need the way you needed it. Yeah. And that's probably not true. You have to have a conversation with them in terms of what they actually need.
I love that. So let's get into some advice for first-time managers. So what would be 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice? Granted, this is a big question, but at the very basic, you're a first-time manager. What are some things that you would advise them to do in order to be successful?
Well, I think the key in this is you manage things, you lead people. So if we think about
say that again, because that's really good.
You manage things, you lead people. So in this sense, we have to be comfortable with the things we do. Are you good with budgeting? Are you good with scheduling? Are you good with feedback? Are you good with setting objectives? Those are things. So when you start to make your list of the things a manager does, go down that list and rate yourself and say, where am I on these things in my own mind's eye, honestly? And then where do I need help and from whom should I get it?
I love it. That's great. What else would you say tell a new manager?
Well, I would also tell them that about the expectations in terms of fully understand the expectations of your job. And when I say the expectations, it's not only managing those people who work for you, but to your point, because the book is right behind you, managing up is manage the expectations, of the people you're working for. What do they expect from you in terms of their performance? Now, I would caution you because they're going to say broad categories. They're going to say, I want you to do quality work. I want you to be committed. I want you to be proactive. None of those things have meaning unless it has clear meaning to you and to them on the same basis. So get definitions. That's what I would tell you. Get definitions.
I love that. Really getting clear on the expectations from those above you is our key for new managers. And so I would also add to those, to your piece of advice, I would say also be clear with those below you what your expectations are as a manager. We talk about managing up, or I talk about managing up all the time. But one of the things I say to people who are managers is, you need to really be able to articulate how you want people to manage up to you. In other words, what kind of a boss are you trying to be? What kind of a boss are you? What's your style? What's your preferences? How do you like to connect? How involved do you want to be in projects? So I really recommend that new managers sit down and have a conversation with their people to learn 2 things. One is to learn what's gonna work for them, the boss. Like, here's what works for me. Here's how I like to operate. But 2, and probably more importantly, you want to really learn what your people need and want from you. Like, really take the time to articulate a partnership, if you will, of what they need or want in a manager. Because I think oftentimes people will come into a new manager role and they'll just make assumptions, So I think you want to really make sure that you have that conversation, that you're building a good relationship and setting expectations on both sides quickly. The other thing I would say for managers, because I see this all the time, is don't Bigfoot your way into the job. Like, unless you're like Al Chainsaw Dunlop, for you young people, go Google that guy. Like, you're not going in there probably to break a bunch of eggs, unless you are. But really go in, learn about your team, learn where they are, learn where their skills are, ask them where things are broken, where things need to be fixed, but don't go in there with, like a Godzilla, I'm going to change everything. Because I don't think that engenders goodwill. What do you think?
Well, I'm with you on this. And in fact, I'll mention one of your heroes, Brene Brown. And she mentions this.
You said that sarcastically, right?
Well, I'm trying to position you and her as peers. And so in this sense, she mentions this notion of being vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is a perfect place to admit to people, look, I'm new to this. I'm going to make mistakes. I suspect you'll probably make mistakes as well. And so in that sense, because we don't know each other and how we are going to interact going forward and what we need to really work well together. So what you need to do is to tell me when it's appropriate to do so, and I'll tell you in return, because we're both on a learning curve.
You know what I love about that is that also opens the door for feedback for the new manager. And as you're stepping into a new role, as Chris said, you should absolutely approach this as a learning opportunity. If you go in there thinking, I'm just going to fake it till I make it, no, really open that door for feedback. Be a little vulnerable. Let people know that you're working on things and this is new to you. It's really going to not only help build a lot, first of all, it's very authentic, but it's also going to help really build a lot of trust and goodwill, I think, with your people. And it's going to give you an avenue to see what you're doing that works and what doesn't.
I would say one more thing. I know this is a little Machiavellian, but there is one more thing to think of. Exactly. What you're dealing with, you are a new manager. You are a new manager. And so if you're going to make mistakes, make a lot of them here because the cost is least here.
Yeah.
You see, I expect you to be on a trajectory. So one day you're running a company. Well, if you're making mistakes with your vice presidents, that's expensive. But if you're making mistakes with brand new people who are only a year or two behind you, then your learning curve costs you less over the larger, I will call trajectory of your career. Now, I know businesses will say to me, "Oh, don't make any mistakes." But my point here is, it's about your career and learn, embrace mistakes early so you make fewer later.
I love that. All right, Chris. So we've got time for one more good question. So one thing I get asked about all the time is I'm a new manager. How do I manage someone who's older than me? So I get this from a lot of millennials, like, how do I manage that baby boomer? How do I manage that Gen Xer? And I don't know if our viewers know this, but Chris Santis is the author of a forthcoming book called Why I Find You Irritating, How to Engage and Embrace Generational Friction at Work. So Chris, what would be the one or two or three things you would tell a young manager? How are they going to navigate the old guy, the old lady, the old woman, the people like me and you?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because it's happening more and more. First of all, let's make the point that when we say older, it's discernibly so. It's not 3 or 5 years. It's a generational difference here that's significant by both parties. We both see that, right? And the other thing is, who is this person that you've hired? Are they a person that's just a pair of hands? Because it's a different circumstance than if you're hiring this person as a particular knowledge and skill set that their experience brings to the table, because you need them. They are not a utility in that sense. They have more weight, and they can become a diva if you're not careful. I'll tell you another thing that really irritates me. Don't address them in terms of their age. Address them in terms of their experience. So you've been working for 30 years, offended, but you have experience that goes across a longer time. You see what I'm saying? So talk experience, not age. And never call them, which always pisses me off, when somebody says to you, "Okay, young man, you're next," knowing full well that they're referring to me because I'm older than them. And I'm thinking, whoa, you have just condescended. So in that sense, you have to be careful how you interact. My advice, one-on-ones are more powerful, and be Socratic is more powerful in asking them what they might do in this situation, as opposed to dictate what they should do.
I love that. Can I just glom onto something you just said about the young man?
Yeah.
I am a woman in her 50s, not early 50s,
I would have said.
Not early 50s either. And when like sales clerks or like waitresses or people, like the 20-somethings call me young lady, I agree with you. Like, so anyone young out there, we do not think it's cute or charming when you call us young person, because we know what you are doing is just, what are they doing to us? What's the word I'm looking for, Chris?
They're pandering or condescending.
It's condescending. It's condescending.
Or being disrespectful or not being deferential.
Yeah, so just knock it off. You can
Yeah,
call
just
me
knock it
ma'am,
off.
which I hate, but much prefer that than miss, young thing. So one more thing about the older managing older people is I think a lot of young people get very intimidated by managing older people.
Yeah.
So like what can they do to really build that bond, to build the trust, in order so that they don't patronizing. That's the word, Robin. Thank you, Robin. Robin got the
That
word.
is a good
Let's
word.
show it. Yeah. What's one thing that they can do, or what would be the conversation they could have so that they can build that relationship with the older person and still kind of maintain their authority?
Well, I think, again, going back to these one-on-ones you would have with them, I would say that just this. Look, I'm going to have to tell you that my responsibility is to be the manager of this group. And quite frankly, if you are uncomfortable, if this actually does make you uncomfortable, then I don't see any problem in stating to some degree, I'm actually telling you what to do when I think you may well know what to do. And I feel, and so it's sometimes I feel awkward in doing so. So you have to work with me on this. And if I'm in any way offending you, it's not my intention, but rather it's just an assumption, a false assumption I've made that maybe you should correct me on.
I love that. Having an authentic, honest conversation as an equal, right? You want to
Yes,
make sure you don't present yourself as someone less than, but you also want to really honor their experience. Well, Chris, I think, go ahead. Did you have something else?
I did have one more thing because
Yeah.
I want them to flip this. Look, because look at it from our perspective, and I want them to
You
be in
mean
our
old people's
perspective.
perspective?
Yes. Look at it from our perspective, meaning that imagine that you are being managed by a middle schooler, and the middle schooler comes off as a heavy-handed with you. What would your reaction be? Even though they have legitimate authority over you, how would you feel in that reaction to that? And so that's the same visceral feeling a person can have when somebody overwhelms them with their authority, when they don't feel that they are, deserving of that grief they're getting. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. So become secure in the role by partnering with your people, not
Yeah.
bigfooting on them. I love it. Well, Chris Santis, is such a delight to have you. I even though I get to see you all the time, but it's really nice to have you come on here. I want to thank everybody for listening to the Friday 15. Please tune in to Cubicle Confidential podcast. You can see it scrolling on the bottom. This week's episode was how to recover from mistakes. And I can't remember next week's is. I can't remember anymore. There's so many. But please join us. Oh, Courtney's going to put it in the chat box. Next week's LinkedIn Live, we're going to be having another special guest, Ms. Carrie Hatch. So we look forward to seeing you all then. And until we see you next week, have a great work week. Be good, be safe, be kind.
Bye-bye.
Bye.